And guys, in this next news story, which is coming from London ways, and detectives investigating the murder of Givani Espuet have worked tirelessly to bring his killers to justice, culminating in the conviction of several men. Over 2 days, 7 defendants were jailed at the Old Bailey for their part in the incident. Despite the intervention of emergency services, 21-year-old Givani died of his injuries after being stabbed 11 times at a Halloween party in 2022 in Sudbury. Detective Inspector Jim Barry of the Met's Specialist Crime Command said, "This was a senseless killing that left a family, a partner and community grieving. Givani was pursued for no reason and was repeatedly stabbed because the defendants didn't want to lose face. If none of these men had taken a knife to a party, then Givani would probably still be alive and these men would not be facing years in prison. Givani had his whole life ahead of him." The court heard how on Sunday the 30th of October 2022, Givani had gone out with 2 friends to a Halloween party at a bar on Harrow Road in Sudbury. In the early hours of that same day, a dispute broke out that spilled onto the streets and punches were thrown. This event then became deadly when at least 2 of the defendants produced a knife. When Kadeem Hibbert lunged towards Givani with a weapon, he ran but was pursued by a group and was then repeatedly stabbed. An ambulance crew happened to be waiting in traffic when Givani was stabbed repeatedly next to them. They went to his immediate aid but could not save him. I just want to say rest in peace, Givani. My condolences go out to your family. A subsequent post-mortem found Givani had been stabbed 11 times, with one of the wounds being a non-survivable stab wound to his heart. Givani was not in possession of any weapon and he had not struck anyone. The stab wounds were predominantly to his back and appeared to have been inflicted whilst he was on the floor. The killers fled the scene, leaving behind a hat discarded nearby that was linked to Courtney Foster. Specialist Crime Homicide began an investigation. All the defendants were arrested in the following weeks and all of them either refused to answer questions or produced pre-prepared statements denying their involvement. Inspector Barry said, "If you suspect someone of carrying a knife, speak to them and point out the dreadful result of knife crime." So those convicted are as follows. Got Kadeem Hibbert was found guilty of murder and violent disorder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 22 years for murder and 2.5 years imprisonment for violent disorder. Sentences are going to run concurrently. You got Sahid Kpaka, who's 29, was found guilty of murder. He had previously pleaded guilty to violent disorder and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 17 years for murder and 2 years and 3 months imprisonment for violent disorder. Again, the sentence is going to run concurrently. You got Courtney Forrester from Luton was found guilty of manslaughter. He previously pleaded guilty to violent disorder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 10 years for manslaughter and 1.5 years imprisonment for violent disorder to run concurrently. You got Bruce Hutchinson. He was found guilty of violent disorder and sentenced to 2 years and 9 months, and he was found not guilty of murder and manslaughter. You got Andre Brown Watson. He was found guilty of violent disorder and sentenced to 2 years and 6 months imprisonment. He was found not guilty of murder and manslaughter. You got Firat Tato. He was found guilty of violent disorder and sentenced to 2 years and 11 months. You got Omari Knight, was found guilty of violent disorder and sentenced to 2 years and 8 months. You got Carl Peters, pleaded guilty to violent disorder and he's going to be sentenced at a later date. And further charges of violent disorder were brought against 4 of the men who will be tried for this offence at a later date. And guys, in this next news story, a woman who let her mother sit in her own feces and urine in the same clothes for a year before she died has been jailed alongside her partner. Natasha Pamant and her partner Liam Leach let her skeletal 58-year-old mother sit in her Leeds home for an entire year. The woman's existence was only discovered when a worried neighbour called social services for help. The prosecutor, Catherine Silverton, told Leeds Crown Court the woman had mental and physical difficulties. The police went at the request of the ambulance service in May 2022 and a neighbour noted hearing screams from a person and called social services. It was said that when a social worker looked through the window at the house, they saw a skeletal leg and swollen ankle and foot. Upon entering, the worker said the smell hit her like a sledgehammer. The prosecutor added there was a large amount of flies and fly papers full of flies hanging around the property. The woman was found slumped in a chair. There were feces and stains on her jumper, and the chair was soaked in urine. She had been sitting there for 3 months. Paramedics had to shower her to get her off the seat before moving her to the ambulance. The house smelled so bad, those going in found it difficult to breathe. The woman had been wearing the same jumper for a year. It was said the woman asked paramedics if they had any food as soon as they arrived, and the court heard the woman had large pressure ulcers on her body, including one which was down to the bone, which could have proved fatal. The prosecutor added, there was consistent with having 4 months of little or no care. The impact would have been fatal if the neighbours did not contact social services. Said the defendants had thrown away her sofa, leading her to go in the chair. She said she gave them her bank card for money, but they left her for days on end. She said she asked the prosecutor asked basically what happened, and she goes that she asked her daughter to clean for her 3 days prior to police arriving, and she also had feces under her toenails, and 2 cockroaches were found in the property, which had no surface, free of rubbish. The prosecutor said Pement and Leach arrived home, and Pement told police her mother did not want help. The prosecutor added, a friend of the complainant said she used to visit up until a year before police arrived, and she said Miss Pement used to make her mum wait until 6 p.m. for food, and she didn't want to care for her, but did it for her money. It was said in an interview, Pament described general difficulty coping and said 95% of the time it was Liam Leach who took her mother to the commode. The prosecutor said her mother did not want medical attention, but she accepted she should have called an ambulance. She accepted the state of the house was disgusting. Liam blamed the council and doctors for the situation of the woman and described Miss Pament as lazy. Both went on to plead guilty to a charge of cruelty against a person in their care alongside a second offence. Mitigation for Leach. His solicitor said his grandmother had passed away on the morning of the sentencing, and she said it's not a case where he had responsibility for the woman. This case is a tragic and serious case. The court heard how Leach now lives alone and had shown a probation worker his garden and new property, and said he is very keen to show the probation service the progress he has made in the garden, and how he managed to keep the house clean and tidy. He said Leach himself has significant vulnerabilities. The defence for Pament said this is the defendant who has struggled with her own adequacy as a result of a poor upbringing. Of course, that inadequacy and lack of maturity, she was 22 at the time of the offending, unites both cases and is an issue with the case. She was bullied at school because of her own lack of cleanliness, and she suffered as a consequence of that. There was lack of emotional support from her mother. So the judge jailed both Pament and Leach for 30 months. So guys, there's a number of stories coming out from the streets of the UK. Once again, if you already haven't done so, please subscribe to the channel. Please give this video a little like, as it will help the algorithms and promote it for others to view as well. Once again, big respect going out to each and every one of you. It's your boy GT. Keep it locked, keep it real.